All right, everyone, so here we are, Thursday morning, coming towards the end of the week, and today we had several stocks that squeezed up over 100%, which was great. The only problem was that the biggest percentage gainer, East, E-A-S-T, that stock was already up over 150% when I sat down this morning. So I was kind of struggling with, where do I break the ice on this stock that's already made a huge move without me? Now, some traders would say, Ross, it's just too extended. You can't even get in here. You got to wait for the next stock. Well, that's one approach. But on the other hand, I've seen stocks go up over 3,000% in one day. So if you said it was extended when it was up 500%, you missed out on the remaining move. So I try to still look for opportunities where I can manage my risk and jump in and capitalize on what is clearly volatility. And in the case of East, it was a very obvious setup. But you know what, today I ended up trading, looks like 8 different stocks, and I'm green on 4 and I'm red on 4. And what was kind of interesting today is if we look at my P&L, we can kind of track it here, starting the day at 0, because of course I didn't carry any trades from last night. And first trade, I went unrealized red, but I didn't close it, and it came back up to green, but it was like a break-even trade. Second trade was down $300. All right, so now I'm moving in the wrong direction. And then next thing you know, I'm up 500, I'm up 700, I'm up 800, I'm up 1,000. And from there, I just ended up getting some nice progress up to about $5,000. And then I dropped down to up about 3,000. And then I made my way back to up 5,000 again, and actually dropped down one more time, and then got myself up to where I sit right now, which is $6,719. So I went red on the day before going green, and then I gave back about 40% of my profit today, twice, not once, but twice. I had kind of deep pullbacks before rallying back up. So in hindsight, I feel like I had a couple close calls today and I should have walked away sooner. In fact, at one point I said to myself, you know, if you get yourself back up above 5,000, walk away immediately. And I got myself above 5,000. And then a second later, I took another trade and I was back to up $4,000. And I was like, oh, gosh darn it. So I got myself a little frazzled today. And you know, one of the challenges was we had so many different stocks moving. I mean, you can see I traded 8 stocks and there were others that were moving that I didn't end up trading. Okay, so let's do the recap and let's go back to the first trade of the day. So bright and early, I'm up this morning and I check my scans on my phone as I always do. That's my routine. I wake up and I check my scans. So I pulled up, this was early this morning, I pulled up East on my phone right here. So I pull up East and I'm like, all right. Well, of course I saw it was on the top gap scan. So I pull up my top gap scan right here. I see it was on the top of the gap scan. And then I look at the chart and I'm like, all right, well, again, you know, I've already missed the beginning of this move. So I type in East, I sit down on my computer a few minutes later, I type in East, and I see that we've just got this, you know, extension, like it's already squeezed up a lot, and I'm just thinking, where do I break the ice in this area? So what I ended up doing was I sort of put East on a side chart. I said, you know, I'll watch it, but I'm just going to put it on a side chart for right now. And right coming into 7 a.m., Gnln started hitting the scanners. And as this one hit the scanners, I was thinking to myself, you know, it looks kind of like WINT from yesterday. Now, for better or for worse, WINT yesterday, although it gave me my biggest winner, it also sold off quite a bit. But nonetheless, as this popped up right here, I got in. Let's see, my first trade was right here. I actually bought at $6 right here. It hits a high of 620. It drops down, right? So it dips down here, and I got in and I got right back out. So that was a quick entry and a quick exit. But in this candle here, it dipped to 560 and then popped back up to 620. So when I was in at 6, it dipped and popped back out and I got out break even. Well, $27 or $37 of profit. Very small winner. So then it dips down, and when it comes back up right here, I was like, all right, I'm going to get back in it. So I get back in it, and although as you can see, it pops up here, as I often do, I'm thinking this has the potential to go higher, and I'm trying to add to the position and be aggressive. And next thing you know, it swings back down and we've got high volume selling, and I go red on the trade. So down, $300. So, I mean, it's not the end of the world, but it was just kind of a little bit of a disappointing start to the day. So again, we'll go back to sort of tracking my P&L here. So first trade up 27, and then I'm down $300. All right, whatever. So I'm in the red. Next trade was on EFSH. Now at this point, I'm in the red and I'm kind of like, I'm looking for something to trade, and EFSH was on my scanner with a 650,000 share float, and it hits the scanner initially, and I pulled it up. I'm going to back this up right here. And when it first hit the scanner, it was on the scanners right here in this area, and I saw it on the scanners, and I put it on a side chart because I was like, all right, it's a low float stock. It's gapping up from yesterday's close, which was right here. So it's gapping up like 15, 20%. And I was just thinking, well, let's see if volume comes in. And then all of a sudden right here, boom, volume comes in. It breaks through 250, goes to 255, 260, and right in those candles, I'm adding. I took a position right in here, and next thing you know, it goes up to 330, right up here, 307, and hits a high of 333. And I honestly was impressed. So I took my starter right when this volume started to come in. I bought 2,500 shares at my lowest entry was 253. I then added at 260, 268, and 279 as it was squeezing higher. So I was adding within about 30 cents, this sort of range right in here as this volume was coming in. And then it squeezes through 3. Immediately it's at 310, 320, 330, and then it kind of stalled out right here. So I took profit at 320, and then all of a sudden it comes all the way back down. And I was like, wow, all right, well, you know what? I'm glad I took profit off the table. But my last shares, I did a dip trade, but it went lower. So this was also like, although it was a good trade, it was also kind of a caution flag. Because now I'm like, all right, this is choppy. Things are going to be a little wild today. I've got to be careful. So on this one, I go from down 300 to up like 4,700 on the day. So 4.7 on the day, right? And this was minus 330 approximately. So went from red to green, a nice swing from red to green. Following that trade on EFSH, because it was a close call, I was like, boy, that was wild. Let me sit tight for a second. So then I said, let's just focus on what is obvious and what has volume. And so I switched to East, which at that time was the most obvious on the day. And I bought it at $2.50. So that was at about 7:15 a.m. So it was right about here that I got in for the break of 250. It ends up going up to a high of 255. It pulls back. It goes up to 260. It pulls back. And, it's kind of grinding here. But it ends up grinding and making its way up to 270, 280, up to 3, pulls back, comes back to 3, drops down, breaks 3, drops down. So it was a little choppy. And then at the open, it was wild. So I actually was green about 4,400 on it through this area right here, right in this area. And then I gave back $2,000 of what I made on it in this area, overstaying my welcome. Trying to time that break back over 3, and it just kept, this thing just kept chopping me out. So I made some money on East, but in the interim, I would take a trade on East. I had a couple trades on East, and then I had this trade on SPAI. So SPAI has news at 8:30 a.m. It hits the scanner, and I jump in it for the break of 5, and this one got me. So this one I'm red on $2,000. It was instant loss, just drops here like a rock. And I was kind of surprised because I looked at this and I was like, well, it's a recent IPO. Blue Sky setup is just right around here at 5. So I'm thinking this has some potential. 13 million share float's not bad, but I got caught in that flush. So with that loss, I dropped from up 4,700 on the day to, actually I was up, I had made my way a little higher on East to about 5,700. So I was up to 5,700 and then I lost $2,000. So now I'm back to 3.7K approximately. So that was my first time giving back, for about 40% of my profit. And I was like, all right, should I just walk away here? What should I do? Now, typically I say my spot to walk away is if I give back 50% of my profit. So if I hit my daily goal of $5,000 and then I give back half, walk away, which is about, $2,500. So not far away from that level, but still, within the range to continue trading as long as I feel I can manage my risk. So after that trade on SPAI, I got a couple more trades on East, and I was able to start to grind back up. So East is moving higher because this was at 830, and then I'm still trading East here. This was let's see, yeah, like 850. So I guess these were sort of on the backside of the move because it really sort of peaked here. I traded East at 809. And then I take a trade on APLD. And on APLD, I lost, what was it, $800. So, I'm kind of rallying back up here, and then I lose minus 800. And this was kind of what it felt like, was I was getting small steps up, and then I was having kind of a big step down. So then I lose 800 on APLD. And on APLD, this one has news, $160 million strategic financing investment by NVIDIA. I'm like, this is going to work. This is going to be a great headline. Now, granted, the float's a little higher on it, but I still thought the headline was great. So I jumped in right here for the break over 5. This was a little flat top breakout. There was a 50,000 share seller at 5, and it goes 50, 40, 30, 20, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Boom, I buy 5,000 shares, and then instantly the seller reloads, it drops. So it came back up, and I was like, I'm not getting back in this thing. I'm too many sellers. And there were just a ton of sellers. So lost 800 on APLD. So again, I'm like, gosh darn it. So I'm sort of struggling to get myself back to a new high of day. And then we have Hoth. Hoth comes up on the scans, and I got in this. You can see I'm up $59 on it. It's nothing to be excited about. I got in this at $1.06, which would have been... it was actually right here, which is kind of obnoxious because it did end up doing kind of what I thought it would do, but I got in and got right back out. And then it continued to be volatile later, but I just was like trading other stuff. So Hoth, I got in and out of. That didn't really help me recoup any losses. OBLG, this one pops up on my scanner, and I see this is a recent reverse split, again with a pretty low float. And it's squeezing up. So I'm like, all right, I'll take a stab on that. This was during regular trading hours. Got in for the break of 4. It drops down to like 380. Stopped out of that, $700 loss. So I'm like, unbelievable, right? So now I make basically no progress. And then, yeah, I was down another 700. So now I'm at about 3.5K or something like that. This was sort of my lowest point. Maybe it was 3.3. I never went back below 3,000, but it came down a little bit low. So now I'm like, all right, you know what? I'm kind of moving in the wrong direction. This was at 9:45 a.m. It's getting a little bit later in the morning. I started at 7 a.m. So, I feel like I peaked, and now I'm on the backside, and I'm wondering if I should just walk away. But then kind of out of nowhere, East squeezes up. So we get this squeeze on East right here, which I ended up giving back a little profit on that. So that's probably what dropped me down to up only 900, or sorry, up only 3,300. And then I took this trade on Whlr. So Whlr saved the day today, 100%. I'm up $4,200 on it. And this was like the game changer. So Whlr squeezed into a halt right here. It opens, dips and rips into another halt, opens, and I got in right here at 190 for the break of $2. And I bought 12,500. No, sorry. I bought 10,000 shares. So I'm in 10,000 shares of that position. And it squeezes up here to 213. It ends up halting up. It opens, does a dip, and then a rip, goes up to 240, then up to 250, 260, all the way up to $3 and $3.40 high. So trading in and out of that gave me $4,200 of profit. But while I was trading that, I made my way back up to 5,000 right here. Well, I guess it was up to about here, back up to 5,000 on Whlr, and then I lost another 900 on East. and then I made it back on WHLR, and then I lost another 300 on East, and then I was like, I'm done with East. I'm just trading WHLR, and I finished at $6.7 thousand. So this was a fairly choppy day. I mean, there's a lot of days where I don't have this kind of like chop of like up and down. Final trade here was I traded all the way till about 10:20, something like that. So I traded a little longer into the day, and at the end of the day, I got paid for it. $6,700 is a good day. It's above my daily goal, so green is good. But at the same time, I wonder if I could have saved myself some stress if I had just walked away a little earlier. And so if we kind of go back and we sort of take a big picture look at some of the trades from today, can we notice anything in common about some of the biggest winners or the biggest losers? I mean, I would say on WHLR, which was my best trade of the day, for sure, and the stock that moved the most from kind of where I was first in it to its peak. This one, I mean, I guess as it turns out, interestingly, this one had a pretty low float. So pretty low float on that one. That's one thing to note. So kind of just grab that whiteboard again. So let's see. So float, right? So the lower float, that was a big one for the winners. So we've got the trade on WHLR with a 275,000 share float, right? So that's pretty low. And then what else was a big winner? We had EFSH. The float on that was 600,000 shares. So, and that was what kind of drew me to it. EFSH, 675,000 shares. Very, very low floats on these. And then the biggest loser, SPAI. I mean, the two biggest losers, Apld, well, that was a 90 million share float, and SPAI was 13 million. 13 million's not high. OBLG, well, that was also a super low float because of the recent reverse split. And Gnln, let's check the float on that one. Gnln, 2.8 million share float. Hoth, barely green on it. Float on that one, 6.7. East, green on it, but it was choppy. Float 1.4 million. So the thing with East is that I sort of was over trading, I think, in general, and over trading the backside of the move, really. The front side of the move is when we first have the MACD crossover, and that's usually when I do the best. And if we look at WHLR, in fact, WHLR, look at the MACD. This whole stretch, the MACD stayed open. And that was where the money was made. Once it crossed over, it was like that was it. Now, EFSH, at the beginning of that move, of course, the MACD was also open because it spiked up so fast. So the MACD basically went straight to open, and this thing squeezes from 240 up to 3 whatever. Yeah, it was right there. And then, of course, it rejected on high volume. All right, well, sometimes that happens. East, though, we look at the MACD on East, and this one was much more of a grinder. So this was the area where, we had sort of that first move. MACD was open, then closed, then kind of above, then below, then above, then below. And sort of right here, it starts to pull away as we come up to 250. But then it kind of closed again, and then sort of opened again, and then it kind of closed again, but it pushes a little higher, so you've got a little divergence. This one was choppier, and the MACD shows that it was not as clean. Now, it doesn't mean there wasn't money to be made, but it was choppier, and I should have been a bit more cognizant of that. I pushed it, I think, a little too hard, and it was just being too aggressive, not for any real good reason. So I would say another common denominator there is the position of MACD. Right? So I could have saved myself some frustration by taking a closer look at that MACD. Now, if we look at the biggest loss, which was on SPAI, the MACD may have been open on that as well. Yeah, it was. I mean, well, actually, it actually wasn't. Funny enough. So, all right, well, that one, it wasn't. So another reaffirming point there. But ultimately, the biggest profit on WHLR was really, it was trading the front side of a move where we had really clean momentum. EFSH and SPAI, those were both, and Apld. At the end of the day, those were all news trades, breaking news, taking that spike and or a spike at the top of the bottom of the hour. And it worked on one of them and it didn't work on the others. And they kind of cancel each other out today. It's kind of a wash, right? When you look at like what I made on those and then what I lost. So some of these lower volume trades where I thought I was getting in something with breaking news early, those didn't work as well as buying something that was a bit more established and jumping on the trend. The challenge with jumping on a trend, like with East, is that sometimes you'll feel like, oh, I'm getting in this too high. I'm kind of chasing it. Should I really buy up here? Should I just wait for a bigger pullback? And then next thing you know, you've missed the whole move. And so the next one that pops up with news, you're like, I'm jumping in this immediately. It's got news with NVIDIA. Boom, I'm in. And then it fails. And you're like, I don't get it. And for whatever reason, it failed. Not necessarily because it wasn't a good setup, but maybe there was just something else that looked better at that moment and traders were focused on that. That's the thing that can be super frustrating, is that same exact stock with that same exact headline on another day might have gone up 50 or 100%. But today, because there was something else that people were focusing on, I say this all the time, like, I could have been the, they always talk about the prom queen and, but they never talk about the prom king, but I could have been the prom king, if only, the 8 more attractive guys at school hadn't been at school that day. You know what I mean? Like I was only, the 9th or 10th runner up, but that's kind of how it is with a stock. Like if you could take out the top 3 good ones today, EFSH might have actually done something, but because there were a couple others that looked better, well, it popped up and then, it dropped back down. So that's the story of my life. And it's the story of these stocks too, where, it could have gone, but for whatever reason, it didn't. And then Whlr, honestly, very surprising, because this is a stock that on other days has attempted to squeeze and is totally failed. It's a real estate investment trust. It's a REIT. It's not a biotech. It's a real estate investment trust. I mean, this isn't something you would typically think would ever, be an all-star stock, but it has a low flow. It's done reverse splits. So I guess you get that imbalance between supply and demand. The volume today is quite something, but this is not a stock that typically does really well. So honestly, when it first hit the scanner, I was like, oh, Whlr again. I can't possibly, this one's not going to do anything. And then of course it does. So maybe it was just at that moment, it was just the right timing and that stock popped up. Now, what I think is interesting though, is, you know how you kind of hear about these celebrity matchmakers, they like put a couple together and it's kind of like, maybe like it's a PR stunt. I don't know. They kind of like, boost their careers with, like a fake affair or something like that. I'm not naming names, but you know what I'm talking about. So that's like in that world. But sometimes it feels like these stocks just sort of magically show up at just the right time. And you're like, how did that happen? And I sometimes wonder behind the scenes, is there, some investment bank or whatever it is that's like, oh, this is the day to turn off the selling algo on this stock and to turn on the buying algo, and, let's see what happens. Because it just sometimes seems like so well timed. Now, call me skeptical, but, this is the market and we have seen these kinds of things before. So I don't know. Whlr, it just kind of, today was its day to shine. And I'm glad that I got some profit on it. I'm glad that I was able to finish the day at, more, well, I guess my peak, literally. This is high of day for me, $6,700. And if we take a look at where I'm at on the month, well, it's been kind of a slow month so far. It's only a short week here, but I'm up $7,148 gross on the month. So today we'll double it up to about 13,000. That's pretty good. And then, whatever I can get for tomorrow will be, add a little icing to the cake. I generally have my weekly goal at $15,000. And the reason I do that is because my daily goal is $5,000, but I don't expect to hit my daily goal every day of the week. In fact, I figure at least one day of the week, I'll probably hit my max loss, which is minus 5,000. So that'll cancel out one of the good days. So then I'm back to maybe just, 2 to 3 daily goals. So anywhere from 10 to 15,000 is a pretty good week. So at this point right now, I'm kind of within that $10,000, $15,000 window, which is nice. And, I don't get bent out of shape over it, but I do sort of pay attention, like, weeks where I'm above it, I'm like, okay, this is good. I'm doing really well. Weeks where I'm coming in below it, or of course, if I'm red, I'm like, oh, okay, this is not great. So I kind of keep just sort of an eye on where I'm trending. Am I kind of averaging, this $10,000, $15,000 range? And if I am, then I feel like I'm doing pretty well. And if I'm above it, then I'm like, all right, this market's strong. And what sometimes happens is I'll have a couple weeks where I'm, just kind of right at it, just slow and steady. No, like this whole week back here in August, I didn't have any day as big as yesterday or today, but I still finished the week with 10,000. And then the next week on Monday, boom, I made 24,000 on Monday morning. Tuesday was slow. And then Wednesday and Thursday, 10,000, 14,000. All of a sudden, it's a $55,000 week in 1 week. Now, when I first got started trading, my goal was to make $1,000 a week. That's $52,000 a year. So to do $52,000 in 1 week is 50 times more than what I set as my goal when I got started. I don't know how many jobs out there you could potentially earn 50 times more on a weekly basis from when you were getting started to, when you get to the top. I feel like a lot of jobs, I don't know, maybe you start at $15, $18 an hour, you get up to 20 to 25, maybe eventually to 30 or 35. If you have a degree or you do whatever, maybe you get up to 50, 75, but most people don't go from $15, $20 an hour to $2,000 an hour. Unless you get, educated and you're an attorney or a doctor or something like that. Of course, there's some people that will, but that's not as common without a lot of work. And I suppose it's true for trading that this didn't come without a lot of work. It did take a lot of work and a lot of time to get to where I'm at. And I have a lot of experience, and all that experience gives me the educated intuition. Someone asked me yesterday on one of my trades, it was the first one of the day on WINT, I think it was, why I held instead of sold for a loss. So WINT yesterday, if we back this up, initially it pops up and I bought on the first dip right in here. So right in here is where I added. So I bought 1,500 shares right here. And then it drops all of a sudden right down here, and I added another 1,500 shares. They're like, why'd you do that? Shouldn't you have just sold for a loss? And so there's two answers to this. If I had taken a full-size position, which at that time of the day for me is 5,000 shares, then the answer is yes, I should have sold for a loss and just cut it and gotten out. However, I started with 1/3 basically of full size, 1,500 shares. So because I had smaller size, I was able to have a wider stop because I was still risking the same amount of money with a bigger stop because I had smaller size. So I was able to give it a little bit more room. And so for that reason, I felt comfortable adding here and then setting my stop basically at the low of this pullback. Now, if it stopped me out there, the shares I added, I would have only been selling for a small loss. The majority of my loss would have been on the position from up here. Because usually when I add, I'm like, that's kind of it. I'm not going to add 4 or 5 more times. That's me. Now, some people will, but usually for me, if it flushes and I add, my stop is basically right below wherever I added because I don't want to lose more. I'll bring down my cost basis, but I don't want to have that new position also go into the red. So if I had started with full size, I would have had to get out right away. But because I had a starter size, I was able to add to my position and then it ended up coming back up, which was good. So, and again, a degree of that comes from educated intuition, but this wasn't a super smooth trade. It ended up working out, but it wasn't super clean. And that's kind of been the theme for this week. We've had the S&P 500 pulling back a bit. Small caps have been a little choppier. And definitely I've seen some traders getting chopped up and going in the red, getting super frustrated, over trading stuff like East, over trading Hoth, getting caught in some of these jackknifes or false breakouts. And I've caught a few of them myself. So this is definitely a week to keep share size smaller. The only stocks I've traded big size on have been the cheaper stocks, like East and Hoth and a couple others yesterday that were on the cheaper side. But the ones like Whlr, which is actually still pretty cheap, and LG, These ones I'm not going with big size. I'm just being conservative because right now I just don't want to have a big loss. We're still at the beginning of the month. It's still time to build the cushion, right? So that's the game plan. Now, by the way, if you guys have not already checked out a 2-week trial at Whlr Trading, there will be a link pinned to the top of the comments, linked in the description, where you can check it out and you can trade side by side with me over my shoulder for the next 2 weeks. Now, all of the new members that have joined during our Labor Day promo, we had a Labor Day sale that's just come to an end. You guys will have access for the next 2 weeks to a special series of classes that we'll be teaching. So that's going to be on Tuesdays and Thursdays next week and then the week after. That's an onboarding series to kind of help introduce you to the curriculum, to the strategy that I'm trading, and it's going to be taught. I'll teach the beginning of the first one, and then one of my students who's got his $1.5 million badge will be teaching the rest of those classes. So he's going to share with you his experience of having actually gone through the curriculum himself as a student, and he's going to share with you some tips and tricks. Now, as a reminder, as always, my results are not typical, so manage your risk, take it slow, and as always, practice in a simulator as you're learning these new strategies. If you want to check out that trial, there'll be a link pinned to the top of the comments and linked in the description. So I hope to see you in the chat room bright and early tomorrow morning. Okay, see you guys in the morning.